Live on connectonair.com and remoteradioweek.org.
Connect on Air.
Remote Radio Week proposes distinct programs in English, French, Spanish and Arabic, featuring experts, examples, debates and technical tips. UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org.
It is day 4 of 5 of the Remote Radio Week. I'm Andy Leve. Thank you so much for joining us. Remote Radio Week is, of course, organized by UNESCO in partnership with the World Health Organization, and Remote Radio Week. It's an online training program that's aimed at building the capacity of local radio stations to produce accurate and professional radio content in the event of containment measures or emergencies, including financial difficulties. Now, right now, we are going to be having a keynote address by Edita Kudlacova, who is the head of radio at the EBU, and she took up this position this year in March. And Edita is going to be talking to us about the effects of the COVID pandemic on the radio industry in Europe. Edita, welcome to Remote Radio Week.
Thank you very much, Andy, and good afternoon to everybody who's watching us now. Thank you. So as you've heard, my name is Edita, and before coming to Geneva to be the head of radio at the EBU, I was working for Czech Radio for over 12 years, and I was leading the innovations team there. When we introduced the innovations team into the structure of the company, colleagues at Czech Radio were embracing the creativity and the new ways of our work that it brought. But that was many years ago. It was actually a time when we needed to start speaking about innovation and digital tools, and we needed to have a structure for it. So it actually had some space where it could develop. In the moment of the first lockdown 2 years ago, nothing had to be institutional or organized. Innovation and creativity was just there, everywhere in our work life. We have seen an incredible amount of new ideas to produce radio broadcasts, to report from home, to connect to the studio via various apps and search for open source tools for the journalists. During the past almost 2 years now, we have also seen something extraordinary in our industry. Almost everything else stopped, life slowed down, people took a break. But some sectors worked harder than ever before. And I would say including us, people in media, journalists, people producing content, people working in news, and people actually delivering information for all our fellow citizens. In our part, it's in Europe, but I would say across the whole world. In the area of public service broadcasting, we have experienced an amazing increase in tuning into public service radio all over Europe. In many countries, public service broadcasters, and especially their news stations, got to #1 position in their national markets. And they are actually still keeping that position. People stopped listening to some content that just filled in their time, but they really focused on information, and they needed those information for their daily lives. And this, of course, goes for online content as well. People found their way to search for podcasts as a source of relief and a source of relaxation. They were often tired from visual content and needed a break, and they searched for both spoken word content as well as music. We have seen an increase and uptake in listening to live music, but also pre-recorded music as well. Parents were downloading and playing podcasts to their children and used it as a convenient form of digital detox for the youngest ones. Radio stations also played a role in a society in another way. Their priceless support to creative industry, arts, music, and culture in general was visible in every country. Many creative projects were brought to life in an incredible speed never seen before. Culture froze in physical space, but definitely not in the linear broadcasting and in the audio content. And the support from the media scene was appreciated by both the wide audience as well as artists and people working in culture themselves. So I would say we have seen a lot of innovation and creativity, and there is a lot we learned during the past 2 years that we will take with us further, and we should take with us further. But at the same time, what we are also seeing is that online distribution platforms are more and more often turning into creators' platforms. And this has brought about many interesting points that we have not discussed up until a couple of months ago. not only that lots of our talents and creative people are leaving to work with platforms who work with audio or live radio production, but we are also seeing lots of developments in the podcasting world that's actually driven by these platforms. As the podcast audience is growing, there are, of course, new models of financing introduced to the market. We are more and more often speaking about exclusivity of online audio content, something that we have never thought about just 2 or 3 years ago. And almost every platform today is launching an audio service that's not just an on-demand tool, but also a space for live audio. We have all seen probably the enormous marketing hype Clubhouse was able to achieve during the last January, while they spoke about something we have been doing forever. They were just streaming live audio. I think that for us, it's great news that the popularity of both listening to as well as creating new audio content is perhaps at its peak right now, and it's exciting to be part of this environment. But it also brings challenges and interesting decisions on our side. To be actually bold enough to take the plunge and be creative and not hesitant while innovating our models of production, but also our innovative formats. A crucial and existential topic for us in radio is, of course, the future over connected devices, and especially dashboards, but not only. The growth in connected devices and the rapid growth in usage of voice assistants has started to change the way radio and audio services are discovered, accessed, but also produced. I think that now we need to be fast and efficient. The innovation and creativity we have proved during COVID is something that we should bring with us further as well. Being innovative, securing our mission during the times of crisis, like we have just experienced, making sure we innovate also the area of technology and distribution, and most of all, staying relevant to our audience. This all brings an increasing pressure and challenge to our jobs every day, but also a great opportunity and many once-in-a-lifetime moments. We may not see our audience face to face, but when they listen to the voices of our journalists and our hosts, they trust us. And I think that that trust is something precious that makes every effort, every project we work on, every extra hour in the studio or out in the streets worthwhile. And now, before I finish with my keynote, I'd like to share with you one slide. This slide is actually taken from a publication of my colleagues here at the EBU in the research team, and it was a publication on the response of public service radios to COVID. Later on in the session, we'll be speaking about technical innovations and tools for radio journalists and producers. But before we dive into these interesting and important areas, I think it's worth keeping in mind that all of these tools will help us better fulfill our role and support what we brought to people around us just over a couple of months ago, and especially during the lockdown. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Edita, there for your insights and expertise, talking about, of course, the effects of COVID and how radio has remained probably even more so that trusted confidant, that reliable source, that friend, that companion for so many people, not just in Europe, but literally all over the world. I just want to ask you, though, if there was sort of a trend amongst radio stations that you work with when it came to providing COVID-related content as a way to inform and educate, but also to kind of nullify the fake news and to get everyone, more comfortable, if in a sense. Obviously, it is a pandemic, so everybody had a level of panic. But going back to the relationship that radio forms with people, was there a trend amongst stations where COVID content, COVID-related programming was more prominent?
Yes, I think I would divide it into 3 areas. One of them, and that's what I also spoke about, is the culture programming, because there, of course, people needed, as culture stopped, there was literally no concert, nothing going on. So there was lots of creativity how to bring culture on air. So some of the stations were producing concerts themselves without the audience, but streaming it live. We have also seen lots of fundraising campaigns for the culture sector. So, for example, I know about colleagues in Berlin who did, I believe, 48 or 72 hours nonstop show that was just playing for musicians. And when people like that music, they could submit or send their money directly to the open account that was supposed to, donate to the music scene. So I think that was one part. The other part where people needed information, but also physical and mental and emotional support, were senior people, because they were affected the most, I think, especially by spreading the panic and getting like lots of disinformation and fake news through their emails. So there were lots of programs jumping up that were with psychologists that were speaking about problems people could feel. They were, like a phone-in show, so people could share whatever they were feeling at home. There were also, in some countries, what we have seen, there were not shows, but more like programs developed to connect people together. So if somebody, for example, a senior person, needed help with going for, like their shopping or groceries, or they needed to arrange something in town, but they were afraid to leave the house, there were shows that actually connected young people with these senior people so that they could meet each other and they could help each other. And I think that was the power of community and local radio stations, especially in this area, because that was something that was appreciated by both sides. Like on one side, you had people who didn't know how to help, and on the other side, you had people who didn't know how to ask for help. And the third one, and that's of course the science programs and the broadcast itself about the COVID, about what it is, if we have, and what kind of information there is, that we have secured, and right data about that. So there was definitely an increase in listening to scientific programs. Some of the stations had them before. Some of the stations did that just because, like all the other governmental institutions, etc., were not spreading the accurate information. But that is, I think, the third area where we see some growth.
And do you think that now we can say that we're prepared should there be, another pandemic or a natural disaster? Have we got concrete case studies or how-to guides that can help radio stations, radio professionals to kind of get quickly and pivot quickly, because that's the word doing the rounds these days, to pivot and still continue to be that source of information and be that confidant without too much internal panic?
Well, I think that one very practical thing that happened during especially the first couple of weeks is that every journalist and everybody working for live radio got a good equipment. Companies they financed good equipment so that you could build your home studio, you had a good app on your phone, you had a good phone, you had a good recording device. So I think that will stay with us, and it was necessary, because I know that from some organizations, where especially when they are tight on budget, I think that most of it's very difficult to define why you would need something that good at home. So I think we have that, so we are ready in this respect. And on the other hand, and that's also, I was very proud on many radio stations, that the response and the reaction from the journalists themselves was so fast and so creative that it took a couple of minutes before they got on air, and they just, they immediately kind of knew what to do, even though they were, I think, doing it more in the way of fake it till you make it, just trying and, going forward with it. So I think we are ready, and I think we have good people, because in radio, you need to know to speak, you need to, search for your sources very quickly. You need to be able to work from everywhere, not only studio, but from your living room, from the kitchen, from your car. And that, I think, makes us very ready. But I would say I would be very happy if there was a bigger break, because I think everybody is tired after these past 2 years. It was incredibly, I think, difficult for all the journalists, because they were working 200% almost without any break, especially the first couple of months. And so then I think that, there would be a good break before we have another crisis like this.
Well, thank you so much, Edita. That's Edita Kudlacova, who is the head of radio at EBU, giving us concrete insight on how radio stations have dealt with the COVID pandemic in Europe. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll be seeing you again soon, Edita. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, and happy listening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely. Live on connectonair.com and remote-radio-week.org.
Connect on Air.
UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Live on connectonair.com